All right. Thanks, everyone, for joining us today. I am very lucky to be joined with Jonathan Switzer from Boardwalk REIT, Paul Rhodes from Maintenance Mindset, Directional Maintenance Services, and Boardwalk Learning Leader, and then Kara Leisure from Core Spaces and the campus side of things. A great group of people to talk about something that is very, very important to all of us right now as we're talking about budget season. We're talking about talent. Maybe we're doing a retrospective on 2025 and trying to not reproduce some of the things that are failing us in the way we've been approaching our business in 2025. And the heart of this conversation talks about this maintenance role. And I know that and I've been a big part about it, pushing for it, and maybe the right or the wrong way along the last couple of years. But this conversation of how can we optimize the maintenance function that looks like centralization in some cases, that looks like simplification in some cases, which I prefer is a better word, that looks like an onshore and offshore mix. There's all these different ways of doing this, roving teams, floaters. There's all these different ways we're trying to solve this problem. And I keep hearing over and over again that it's not being solved. So one thing we always want to try and do is follow the money. So the conversation of following the money creates some uncomfortable conversations around how maintenance is structured within the organization. I put up a poll a few weeks back. Adrian Danila supported me by reflecting that poll on his side of things, created a ton of conversation. Everyone in this call joined in here. Jonathan was kind enough to offer his opinion from a REIT perspective. Paul, obviously, given your experience, and Kara came to the conversation. And so I thought, well, rather than have this sitting around as a feed, let's have the conversation in real time around maintenance, culture, budgets, retention. I guess we can say that retention piece is both the resident side and then the staff side of things because they're related. So why does this matters? So when we talk about property management, it is very difficult to argue against the point that maintenance matters and it relates to the ROI or the NOI of that building. Now, who cares about NOI as a priority is subject for conversation. Who cares about the profit of that building is part of this conversation. But ultimately, the center of that performance is related to these people that are on site. And what is discovered in this poll is that there can be a lack of alignment between budget and reporting authority. Where that becomes complicated is that if you've got the money but not the authority, it's low priority. If you've got the authority and not the money, then you're hosed. There's a better word for it, but I'm not going to use it on the show. And that makes it really complicated to evaluate your priorities. So we'll kick that off today around reporting lines. Talent competition is a problem. For those that are following in the news, private equity is entering into this space, both on the 3PL, on the fee manager side of things, and on the services side of things. So if you think you're competing with Costco or Starbucks or a gas station or whatever for these talent, you're wrong. You're competing against Blackstone. You're competing against massive private equity firms that are buying HVAC companies, painting companies, turn companies because of the amount of opportunity in this space. And so that obviously all cascades downwards. So the talent market is hitting a cliff. Average age of a person that trades is 47 years old. That cliff is coming very, very close. We're losing people in the business. The business price for the people is going up. And if you look at, depending on the market that you're in, you may have some flattening or some pressure on your rental income. So this was kind of creating a perfect storm and a great conversation to have here. First thing we'll do here is go around the horn with respect to introductions. We'll go Paul, Jonathan, Kara, and kick it off. Quick intros, and we'll get our first question around maintenance career paths. And we'll drive this all towards a healthy conversation around culture and budgets, and hopefully get some ideas that you can put into your budget for or make some healthier arguments around how you're budgeting for your maintenance teams and your on-site teams for 2026. Hope that sounds good for everybody. And thanks for joining and listening in. Paul, why don't you kick us off with some intros?
Sure. Thanks for the invite, Guillermo. I've been in the apartment industry for over 30 years. Started out as an on-site maintenance tech and worked my way up to eventually running the customer training program for HD Supply. And then almost a decade was the national educator for the KMT program out of NAA. Since COVID, I've been a director of maintenance and then the senior manager of maintenance learning for Brookfield Properties. And somewhere along the lines, I started talking on podcasts and ended up with one of my own and co-host on a couple others. So I'm a weirdo loudmouth maintenance guy, basically, is what it is.
Love it.
What I like about your snippets, there often can be between 35 minutes, 45 minutes, or there's like a 4-minute, 5-minute check your windshield wipers, right? So good conversations, what you do there. And then Jonathan.
Thanks, Guillermo. Happy to be here. I'm the PM coordinator for Boardwalk up in Northern Alberta. Like Paul, I came up through the ranks, starting with Boardwalk as a maintenance landscaper in Banff. 7.5 years in, I wanted a bit more and ended up mentoring, doing a lot of training in Southern Alberta. Then moved up to Edmonton and became the maintenance evaluator for Boardwalk cross country. And somehow managed to settle into a preventative maintenance role, specializing in fire prevention.
I think that'll be plenty to dig in on just even the role of preventative maintenance versus the talk around preventative maintenance. Like clearly Boardwalk is putting some money behind the outcome. We don't see that everywhere. So I hope we get to get a little touch on that a little bit. Kara.
Yes, thanks for the invitation, Guillermo. I truly appreciate it. Kara Lazier, I've been in the industry since the 1900s, started like you guys as a leasing agent, and just worked my way up. Back in the days when you had managers smoking in an office, if you can imagine that. This is all I've ever done. I'm a regional manager with Core Spaces right now. And I also have a platform called Turbo Chaos and getting into this podcast season. So I love the invitation. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us. And your podcast will be available on Apple, Spotify.
It's all in the works. So TBD. Stay tuned.
The passion around culture versus the chaos of what's happening is the underlying conversation you're seeking to have.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today, everybody. Let's get into it. I think everyone may or may not know me, but I'm not very valuable in this conversation versus the three guests we have here today. So we'll start with Jonathan, top right on my screen. Maintenance career paths. Now they I don't want to say historically been overlooked, but there's chaos. I'll leave it there. And there's a lot of questions. So what's your perspective on maintenance career path? And as we talk about the rolling of authority, the authority paths, and then the accountability, and then the budget. What have you seen in your experience?
There isn't really a path. It's entirely dependent on how curious and how ambitious the maintenance associate is. If they want more, they have to actively seek it and push for it. And this is something I've taught all of my fellow maintenance to do, is to advocate for yourself, which unfortunately they're not so great at. They like to get in there, they like to fix things, they like to be the hero for the residents, and they're genuinely happy with that, with a bit of recognition and fair pay, but they're not particularly good at pushing for more if they want it.
Right.
What do you see, Paul?
Same exact thing. And I agree with you. The fact that you are leading a preventive program at Boardwalk is a part of that culture and some of the questions I think that we need to look at. We're talking about a career path that right now is, if we use that path analogy, it's got brambles, it's got trees, it's got logs, it's got things that are in the way that only the technician themselves, using a machete and using their force of will, are going to chart their own, because there are very few organizations that have a clearly delineated, if you do this, you can get this.
Mm-hmm.
And from a cultural standpoint, it's all reactive in nature, not preventive or initiative in nature.
So then, Kara, should we be surprised? Like, given the two data points here, do we have a problem?
We do have a problem. And it's something that I have been contemplating on for a while now, and something that we're working on at Core Spaces is how do we as operators get into these communications with the maintenance teams, right? Because Jonathan, like you said, and Paul, unless they're chopping down the trees or they're in front of their property manager or they're in front of their regional saying, hey, I want to go from a maintenance tech to a lead. I want to take my CAMT. I want to do XYZ. How do I do that? They're not usually very vocal. So I think an important piece for us as the operators is to start those communications with them, for them in the interview process. It's got to start from day one. And then what can the company do to get them? Because most companies will pay for your CAMT. We'll get you CPO certified. You know, we want them to take the next step, but we have to realize we may have to guide them, mentor them, and coach them in the very beginning.
So what I'm hearing is we've got a reactive role and a reactive career path. And I think we all can agree that reactive maintenance is the most expensive type of maintenance you could ever imagine. And so we've got this underperforming career path. I'll call it underperforming career path.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't do what it needs to do for everybody. And, you know, I think, Jonathan, what you chatted about on the thread, especially given your role of preventative maintenance, like, I mean, and actually I'll ask Kara and Paul, how often do you see a preventative maintenance lead in your experience?
Ask that question again. Did you say lead?
How have you seen a preventative maintenance leader in your experience? At a third party, at a fee manager, at a owner operator, at a REIT? Also,
Jonathan is number 2 that I've seen in my career. Yeah. And when on that LinkedIn, the survey that you did, it was interesting to me when Jonathan commented, I clicked on his profile and I'm going, that exists beyond just a concept. That's an amazing thing that there is a position. The only other title I've seen with preventive maintenance on it was from an affordable housing company that had preventive maintenance in the title, but they were focused on the affordable inspections that was happening. So they tied in preventive maintenance to the REAC inspections. And that was their primary role. But Jonathan's the second one I've seen. We're not a preventive culture.
Right. And I will say, Jonathan, you're the first that I have seen with the actual title. So kudos. I think it's important that we look at that, and that's going to give me some food for thought, right? We have national maintenance directors, but are they exclusive preventative? No, they're, you know, it's not just a one and done. And I think that if we have that across the board, that focused on preventative maintenance and went site to site implementing and making sure it's getting done, think of the cost savings. I mean, really.
I mean, it's 10, we used to, in industry, like, I mean, in my experience in heavy industry side of things, like, it was a 10-to-1 number. Like, preventative maintenance was 10 times cheaper than corrective.
Oh.
Right? And we would actively track the corrective to preventative work order split. And if we were past that 2/3 number, 2/3 corrective to 1/3 preventative, we were into the part where people are getting hurt. There was significant damage to the assets. You were living in an at-risk profile, meaning that you didn't know day to day something could go wrong and have it significantly impact the asset performance. And so, like, and that was at 66%. We really tried to drive things down to 50, but it was just, in Jonathan, to your role, the presence of your role indicates there's budget, there's funding, there's an understanding in Boardwalk around, if we don't do this, the downside is much greater than if we do this. So how did your role emerge at Boardwalk?
Well, the role's been there for quite a while. I actually report to my leader, Chris. He's a preventative maintenance coordinator too, and wow, that role was primarily organizing all of the, annual inspections, ULC 536s. It is a tough deal to orchestrate all that for a portfolio as big as we're doing for Northern Alberta. We've got Edmonton, St. Albert, Fort Mac, Grand Prairie, Spruce Grove. There's a whole pile.
And for context, that's half the size of France.
Yeah.
Like Alberta's the size of France. That's roughly half the size of France. So you think of how big that is. That's, we're talking about maybe Kansas and Arkansas added together. It's a big space.
Yeah.
Very scary.
I mean, we have those titles. We have that work that we're doing, and we're responsible for those preventative maintenance things. However, it's not immune to the other problems that we're going to talk about, the structure and budget. Preventative maintenance starts with maintenance associates on site. They're supposed to be inspecting their boiler room on a regular basis. They're supposed to be changing filters, all of these things, and filling out logbooks. But the people that they report to are not the ones that are looking at these logbooks. They have no understanding of building maintenance or why preventative maintenance costs so much less money long term. So even with that structure that we've built, there's still gaps that need to be filled.
What do you see? I mean, as a leader in this function, what do you see as a gap to help people see what's around the corner? Because right now, if you're in budget right now, maybe it's time to start thinking about penciling in a role for preventative maintenance and making that business case.
Well, I mean, we have that. We've got a preventative maintenance associates, which was basically maintenance plus. And they were experienced, interested individuals. They're tending to a lot of the things that just a step below you would bring in a plumber for, or bring in an HVAC guy for, but they could handle these things. But they don't report to the site leaders. So they don't know what's going on unless they get into the buildings, and there's only so many of them. And there's no direct path between maintenance, preventative maintenance, my role, or becoming a more advanced tech in one of the trades fields. So that path needs to exist. And I think the only way you're going to get that is having preventative maintenance on an executive level.
Okay. How does that land, Kara, when you're looking at the core spaces plan?
So, in the operational side of budgets, we obviously have preventative maintenance. We have our teams do the normal preventative maintenance, air filter checks, your norm, right? Paul's over here laughing like, yep, sounds about right. But I'm really intrigued, Jonathan, by this preventative maintenance, just designation. I think it's very valuable. And because let's be honest, when the on-site maintenance teams are there, they're running work orders, they're in extreme temperatures, they're being pulled in all directions. We all know it happens. We like to think that we live in this fairyland, that it never happens, but they're being pulled all the time. I need you here, I need you there. When do they really have time for preventative maintenance? Let's be honest, they don't.
They don't.
So I think
they don't.
they don't. So I think it's a very crucial conversation that on the operations side we need to be having and honing in better on the preventative maintenance side.
Well, and the culture, you mentioned this, Jonathan, Paul, you said as well, the culture around preventative maintenance is a proactive culture. Mm-hmm. And so we just talked about how the career is reactive, the role is reactive, and now there's this kind of like the other way of looking at it from a proactive perspective. So Paul, in your training background, which is kind of the foundation of the career path, how do you start to pull that out? And we'll get into budgets and authority in a second here, which is we'll kind of let this as the setup.
How do you start to pull it out? Is that your question?
Yeah. How are you doing that?
You acknowledge it's a thing. And by that,
yes.
When I was at HD Supply, and even when I was in NAA and speaking at conferences and all of these training events, it is still to this day, first, if there is a cost for the property for training, you take out a large percentage of the people that will be allowed to go. That's the first thing, because one, I'm already losing my maintenance technician from doing the reactive things that we know is going to happen. And then 2, I have to pay for them to go somewhere and learn or participate in a learning event. And then 3, it's still to this day an occurrence that the day the training event happens, that morning, if, and I'll come back to this, if your maintenance associate knows the training event is going to occur that day, in the morning, their leader comes and says, "Oh, no, we have an inspection. We have somebody visiting. We have a work order. Pipe broke. We have a something that happened. You can't go to training because reaction."
Yep.
And the piece of that I said I'd come back to is whether or not your maintenance team knows, because right now the culture of reactivity has your maintenance associate not in any communication chain for their enrichment unless they are active on LinkedIn or active on themselves. There's nothing being fed that is not filtered through the property manager or regional or their leader somewhere, because by and large, maintenance associates are hourly. It's a legal reason. They can't have email on their phone because they would have to get paid for responding to emails after hours. Again, it's all response. And our maintenance technicians, and I'll actually take it one step further and say we're not in a problem, we're in a crisis. Based today on weareapartments.com, over the next decade for population growth and all that, we need 4.3 million apartments in the next 10 years, new, above what we already have. Break that down, that's 430,000 apartments additional every year, new. And if we take an average of 1.5 toilets, that equals, on my basic math, 645,000 toilets that need somebody to plunge them. And according to job and labor statistics, over the same 10 years, all skilled trades will lose 4 out of every 10 workers.
Yeah. So 5 leaving for every 1 coming in.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes, those are the numbers. So we're not in a problem. This is a crisis. And all in all, according to the National Apartment Association Pain Survey, the number 1 desire of existing maintenance technicians is money. Okay, that one's easy. That's the gimme. What's number 2 and number 3? Training and a career path.
What a setup. Okay. So with that setup, Paul, thank you. You're doing my job for me. Now, Jonathan, on the thread, you chatted about your training and so let's talk about, if we just could, the 3 of you could just give your experience. Where does maintenance roll up in terms of organizational hierarchy, and where is their budget?
Well, I imagine, like us, most places, that maintenance would be responding to the site leader. Site leaders, they're thinking quarterly. They're not thinking, 2 years, 4 years, 6 years in advance. They're not thinking of, devaluation. They're not thinking boilers. All right. They're thinking, well, how do I maximize my NOI this quarter, the end?
Yep.
So there is no budget for preventative maintenance within their maintenance realm, because their maintenance realm ends at the individual maintenance associates under their leadership structure, and that's it. So there's no budget for big picture.
So the budget is in the property manager, like portfolio.
Mhm.
The accountability, so the organizational hierarchy, they roll up into a maintenance leader, or they may not roll up into the property manager.
That would be under the property manager.
So they roll up the property manager. So, okay, great. Paul, what have you seen?
Same thing.
Same
they
thing?
they will roll up into the property manager. And yes, I will admit, on many management companies GL coding their lines, they have a line that says preventive maintenance. To the maintenance supervisor and even the maintenance teams who have been trained that if we want something, the answer is no, because we don't have it in the budget this month. That means that if I run out of air conditioning filters and I happen to have some extra time this month, if I had more air conditioning filters, I could get ahead. But the answer is no, I can't get any because we don't have the budget. And to your point, the maintenance team rolls up to the property manager, who at best they might purchase before the actual need to perform preventive maintenance. The scary part is how many property managers throughout my history with HD and NAA, how many property managers view that GL line for preventive maintenance as a slush fund.
I was just going to say.
Meaning we don't spend that money until the end of the month because I might need to order something for a resident that's yelling and screaming. Preventive maintenance doesn't yell and scream or leave you a Google review.
Right.
Maybe they should start.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure that's coming. There's an AI, Arnold Schwarzenegger is going to attach himself to that boiler you've got, and he'll start leaving Google reviews when his temperature high limit gets tripped. That's what's going to happen.
To the filters.
Yeah. Now, as a fee manager, Kara, this is kind of like, hopefully you can rip on your perspective as a fee manager, because it gets complicated. To everyone listening that may not know the intricacies of the business, like if I own a building, it kind of makes sense that I want to take care of the building. But if I'm managing the building, there's something else.
Right.
How does that play in from the fee manager side of things?
So I want to say this. So historically, maintenance has been back of the house, right? We have got to bring maintenance, especially the maintenance supervisor, front of the house. That maintenance supervisor needs to be in the budget boot camps. We send the managers off to this 3-day retreat and everything's great, but we forget about the mechanical side, right? And while the property manager innately is responsible for the entire community, right? We all know this, but so is that lead maintenance supervisor. And I think once that we in the industry start realizing they are just as important as your on-site manager, then you're going to have this cohesive relationship between the two, and the respect level and the collaborative conversations. And they're not going to be dismissed like, oh, just go do your work orders. No, we're going to sit down and talk about the needs. This is what I need for preventative maintenance. This is where we need to budget it. And so I think that you have got to really have that level of respect for your maintenance supervisor and sit them and bring them into the conversations. We lose out.
So is it a pull then? We talked about, we opened the conversation around the career path, how it's like up to the, this is not right or wrong, but what it is that it's incumbent on the maintenance associate to grab their career and pull the career forward. And so I've talked to tons of maintenance techs and similar conversations in terms of what they do. They kind of get there, they do the work, they do the thing. If you were to ask, 50 maintenance techs and to put their hand up and said, who wants to become front of house and join us in the budget boot camp? How many would do that?
You would be shocked. I have conversations with, and I'm specifically more talking about your lead equivalent to a property manager, right? But also
let's hold that thought. Equivalent to a property manager. I'm coming back to that.
Okay. And I will say the younger, because I'm not going to say my age, but the younger generation that is coming in, they're very tech savvy. They do want to be heard and recognized. More of us Gen Xers, let's be real, we're kind of just, all right, I'm going to do the work. I'm here. Let me get my tool belt on. Don't bother me. I'm going to get my work orders and I'm going to go. You go. But what we're seeing now is these Gen Xers too are becoming more tech savvy, right? And now they want to be heard. Now they're like, wait a minute. Like this epiphany has gone off. Paul, correct me if I'm wrong. It's been, I think, within the last 5 years that it's like we are seeing them step forward and say, I need to be in this conversation. You're doing this wrong. They're finally vocalizing just a little bit, but enough to be heard.
Because otherwise they're just bitching at the coffee room, right? Like,
yeah.
And bitching ain't switching is something I hear all the time. And so like, if we're just bitching about it and we're just saying it afterwards, we got to figure out a way to kind of bring it front and center. And so who pulls that forward? Like we talk about it. We agree. We all nodding heads. We're getting great comments here, but like, who's going to say this has to change? And the question I have is, I mean, in 12 months from now, September 5th, 2026, if we do not change this, what happens? Jonathan?
Well, we end up spending way too much, 40% more on average across the industry we're spending on reactive maintenance. But you don't see too many preventative maintenance executives, right? We do see asset managers and the like, but with little understanding of how buildings work, how they fall apart, what it takes to maintain them, let alone the financial aspect of doing so. And unfortunately, the not just in this industry, but in other industries, it's trending towards rapid acquisition and disposition. And they're not thinking, hey, let's keep this building up for 10 years. They're thinking, hey, how can I maximize all my quarterly numbers so I can sell this building for a mint and dump all these problems on somebody else? And unfortunately, that's just that's the way the industry is going. And there's a law of diminishing returns there. We see everywhere we go throughout our cities, infrastructure failing under this model, and that there isn't much to be gained from, building new. I mean, we see some of that with, you'll see pushes towards, green infrastructure, but, they'll throw away all the embodied energy of existing infrastructure in exchange for a slight improvement on, working energy and a little energy savings here and there. So the whole thing needs to start making sense from a much higher level down.
Mm-hmm.
Paul, what have you seen? If we don't fix this in 12 months from now, what's going to happen?
Just to bring some specific numbers, according to We Are Apartments on weareapartments.com, 41% of the building stock of apartments in the US right now were built before 1980. So that means, 45 years ago, these over a third, almost half of the apartments that we deal with currently have been renovated at least once. Just from a timeline looking in there, more likely they've been renovated twice to do what you're referring to, of buy it, flip it, upgrade it, and then sell it and pull the equity out of it. The challenge was that update, that renovation done in a way to be lasting, or was it done for bottom dollar? I'll let you infer your answer. And depending on what your answer is, that means that the person who acquires it the first time will be able to take some out of it because lower instant cost repairs. Longer term, the next sale and acquisition is going to be startling because they are beginning, if they begin a preventive maintenance program, they're already at the end of the life cycle of the last renovation that was done.
Mm-hmm.
to answer your question, where does it have to start? It's got to start at the senior leadership level. It has to start being more than not only a line item. Again, I go back to it has to be acknowledged as a need.
Mhm.
This has to exist beyond just a talking point, just because that, to kind of pull on a little bit of a loose thread there, the training. It's a talking point. We need training. We need to train our people. We need to train our people. Oh, wait, we have an inspection. Nope, training's canceled. We need to train our people. We need to train our people. You know, they should know this. They should know this. Why don't they know this? Well, the training for the past year has been canceled, or the only training we were able to get was the free one that, yeah, they bought them lunch and pizza, but it was a sales pitch more than it was to learn how to solve problems at their building.
Yeah.
So all of this, it has to be acknowledged and important. Organizations like Jonathan's, you have to have somebody there who starts doing it and is empowered to drive what goes on. If it doesn't happen a year from now, to finish out your question, if it doesn't happen a year from now, the building's going to be a year older. When a resident calls and something breaks, we'll fix it. We'll spend more money. We'll get more stress, and we'll continue to have a high turnover rate on the maintenance side of the house, because to a maintenance technician, problem, I'll fix it. Problem, I'll fix it. But at no point in time are we preventing the problem from occurring in the first place.
What I find ironic in kind of the conversation on the M&A side of things is that, are we buying revenue that comes from a building, or are you buying a building that creates revenue? Right?
Ooh.
Because like, this is a balance sheet. We're robbing from the balance sheet to pay for the P&L statement for NOI. And that just doesn't work out in asset businesses for very long. Like, that's just a bad strategy. Even if you're flipping something for a 12-month cycle and you hand that over with a whole bunch of deficiencies in the infrastructure of the building, that deal is gonna die at DD. And you're gonna, all that effort and money that you put into to try and find a buyer for your flip is gonna die at DD, because the capital, to your point, Jonathan, the logs aren't up to date. All the infrastructure isn't where it needs to be. And so I just find it like, this is the part that I'm really like it collides in my brain that you've got a asset-based industry that doesn't regard the asset as the priority.
Yep.
And that's like an uncomfortable conversation.
Oh yeah.
Right? Kara, what in the fee manager side of things, how do you guys take a look at it? If we don't solve this problem from fee manager side of things, what happens in a year from now?
Oh, I want to say, Paul, you said it so eloquently, right? But I'm going to come back to your question, but I want to say one more thing is, I want us to get out of the mindset, one person, 100 units.
Oh,
Yeah.
How about no? How about the need of the asset? How about if you have a 1980 product and you have 200 work orders? Can we stop? That's where we're seeing burnout too on our maintenance guys. You know, if you have a brand new build and it's a new dev and they're just doing punches and everything's under warranty, you might get away with that. But guess what? You get move-ins, things happen, right? It's a snowball effect. So to answer your question, I feel like we've got to have these conversations at that executive level, right? Mm-hmm. It all starts at senior leadership. Who's making the decisions? It's the C-suites. It's the asset management team. And, you know, if they're not understanding of the building and they're just looking at the numbers, how do we make this deal work? I mean, we all want a deal to work, right? I mean, we all know NOI, bottom line, it's got to work. We got to make money, right? That's just not even a question. But if we are not staffing these sites correctly, and we are not doing the preventative maintenance, you will be at a loss every single time.
Okay.
You're going to lose money.
Which gets us to the point that Paul's only met 2 people that do this job. So,
well,
like,
yeah, that's just in the preventive side of things.
Yeah.
To Kara's point, the only way, and I left my soapbox out in the hallway, so I won't get on the 1 per 100 soapbox. But if we're going to change that equation, we have to define the roles that we want to fill.
Yes.
I mean,
Okay.
the conversation right now is on centralization or
Yes.
podding or off-siting or all of the different buzzwords that artificial intelligence gives us the ability to begin to take hold. But at the end of the day, this doesn't run a plunger. In other words, the physical aspect of the asset, we are at least, the technology says we're at least a decade away from having a robot replace a human being perform the physical tasks. That means that right now, if we're going to, as you say, Kara, if we're going to staff appropriately, what does appropriately mean?
Mhm.
And we're throughout the industry, staffing wise, right now, we're going through a lot of churn. You've got owners and operators saying, we know, they're admitting we're decreasing headcount in our offices because we can centralize pod, offsite, all those administrative tasks. And yet, for our career pathing, our maintenance teams are trained, they are cultured, they are pushed to only be reactive.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And if we're going to have our maintenance teams be the face of our properties, how are we going to develop or reinforce the importance of going up to a resident and asking a question, asking them how their apartment is, as opposed to what it is right now? I'm going to wait until something breaks and then go fix it.
Yeah.
But it seems to me we keep having this recurring kind of like characterization of the function as being reactive.
It is.
And so like, what is it going to take? And to reactive into the role, the culture, the approach, the career paths, right? We know that's bad news. We're managing these assets. And so what is it going to take? Like, and we talked about this a little bit yesterday on our call, but like, what's going to create the rise up, or like if the consequence of not solving the problem isn't significant, no one's going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And if maintenance are asking for to be included, but without actually the context of why they should be included, they're going to get dismissed. It's just the way it works. And so how can maintenance, because we talked about senior leadership over and over again, but these senior leaders, I mean, and senior leaders are smart people. They make critical decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the gap that maintenance can surface so that they can earn that seat at the table? Because I believe that no one deserves anything. You have to earn that seat at the table. So how is maintenance going to earn that seat at the table so they can voice their concerns about the asset that we're all trying to manage and draw revenue out of? Like, what's that look like? I mean, Jonathan, you guys are doing it at Boardwalk.
Mm-hmm.
So at Boardwalk, how did that seat emerge? How did you guys get that seat at the table? Because it's working, and to the point that you're even focusing on just fire across the 40,000 units you guys manage. Is it 40 or 60,000 units?
Across Canada, it's 33,000.
33,000 doors you guys manage. So it's not a small problem, right? In a varying climate. So how do we earn the right versus ask for it? Because I don't think we're going to get it from asking for it. How did you guys do that?
I mean, part of it's ownership. I mean, fairly robust profit sharing mechanisms and so forth. But, you know, again, we built these systems into place prior to this industry shift towards rapid acquisition, and we are running into problems there too. Like we used to have one maintenance associate per building. We're down to one maintenance per 3 buildings in our, efforts to optimize, right? And it's taken its toll. we'll see things like our turnover rate in maintenance has gone up drastically, but our wages have gone up. Profit share has gone up. Our benefits are quite good. Why are these people leaving? Well, they're stressed out. They're
Yep.
stressed out. They want to do good.
Mhm.
And I think that is something that is inherent in maintenance people. Whether it's, they like to fix things, they like to make things better. And when they can't do so, job satisfaction almost trumps the other things. So if they can get the same amount of money somewhere else with less stress, they're going to do it. Or hilariously enough, South Park did a bit of commentary on this, where all the maintenance guys were driving around in fancy cars and heavy jewelry because all the fixers were making a ton of money as independents. Because you could go out there and make $50-$60 an hour being a handyman on Craigslist. It's like, okay, well, but it lacks the stability that most of them are also looking for. So if we don't find that balance of ownership, allowing them to own their sites, own their building, take pride in it.
And one thing I think that you shared with us is like, if you're doing, and this is a maybe for those listening that caught on to the one associate for 3 buildings and just completely said, well, this guy's living in a pipe dream. Is there a relationship between the preventative maintenance program and the ability to have a one associate in case? And I'm not saying that's the optimal situation, but because you have, I'm going to guess that because there's an existence of preventative maintenance programs, you're able to have that kind of a staffing relationship. Is that
you
pulling
point
at it?
out a very important caveat, because Boardwalk has special teams. We have electricians, we have plumbers, we have HVAC, we've got tub reglazers. We got teams that specialize in just doing tub surrounds. So we do have that scaled infrastructure that allows us to run less maintenance on a building. However, the preventative side of things is still not there. Like we have the roles, we have the titles, but our preventative maintenance associates are not checking pumps before they fail. They're replacing the pumps when they fail, right?
Oh.
And there is no allocation of budget towards these things. It's like, oh, we'll put in a new pump and we'll predict that it'll last 5 years. We won't touch it, just 5 years, and then we'll replace it again. Right. But, you can't improve what you don't measure. We're not measuring things like mean time between failure. These are all things that you would expect in a preventative maintenance operation in a factory, for example, right? Mm-hmm. The residential industry could benefit a great deal from running preventative maintenance a lot more like a factory.
I get that.
But not everybody has those backup teams, that the plumbers and the electricians that they can call on for the specialized stuff, and everybody works to their maximum skill set. Mm-hmm. We're talking about an industry where the maintenance guys need to be able to do everything.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And not just wait for it to come to them. So I think just to kind of close it out, so we make sure we hit things on time here, we've agreed on is that there is an argument economically, culturally, operationally to make maintenance a leadership position, not just a kind of co-pilot. We're talking about assets here, right? We've talked about there is a crisis at hand. If we don't solve this problem, the consequences are significant, both of the operational pieces, the P&L, the NOI, and even the ability to M&A these buildings, because it's going to have an ability. What you're buying is changing, or it's eroding, or it's becoming depreciated at a faster rate. We've talked about the culture around preventative maintenance, and just being proactive in itself has new roles, new responsibilities, new ways of doing things. And that's something that needs to kind of drip in on everything. So we're kind of like in budget season, and as a role in your different roles, and let's, speak to the people that hold the budgets, like the VPs and kind of like a call to arms, right? Or like a rise up, right? What message, and we'll go through all three of everybody here. Kara, you haven't spoken for a bit here, so we'll jump with you and then we'll go Jonathan, Paul. What message do you want to lend to people with, if you don't do this, this is what's going to happen? So what's the, if you don't do this, what's your message?
I think if you don't do this, you're going to end up with this, is if you don't bring in your maintenance supervisors into your budget conversations and really listen to them. And if you don't hone in on those KPIs and you're just looking at your P&L and doing your T12 and just putting a number in there, you're doing a big injustice to yourself. Bring in your maintenance team. Listen to what they have to say. They're going to tell you more than you ever want to know. But you have to be willing to sit down and make them a part of the conversation.
And that's an inclusive conversation, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
respectful, being respectful about what they've got to say and take it to heart.
Oh.
And what they have to say is what, this is going to affect everything.
Yeah, you have to show them. I mean, we all show respect to everyone across the board, but you have to show them the same respect to what is your property manager,
Mm-hmm.
right? I mean, they are the professional out there.
And to your
That's
point
their niche.
earlier, equivalent to the PM.
Equivalent to a PM. Yes.
Jonathan, what's your comments? If you don't do this, this will happen.
Well, if you don't measure, you don't improve. And if you don't budget for preventative maintenance, your building falls apart. It's pretty straightforward.
And that's a negative
I should have
consequence.
just said that.
Well, the negative consequence is at some point, the value of your building is going to be the point where you're not going to be able to sell it. And you're going to have to turn around and invest that into preventative maintenance anyways, just to keep the building, liquid. So best get to it and start, what is the rule of thumb is 4% of the replacement value of a property should be applied to preventative maintenance. Even if you don't know the fine intricacies of your boiler room, start somewhere and that's a good start.
Wonderful. Thanks a lot, Jonathan. And Paul.
I like to play this game as I travel around the country. I'll drive through whatever apartment community and whatever city I'm traveling to and in. And the game is, and I have yet to have it invalidated, is that the way the swimming pool is maintained at the property is a direct indicator for how effective the maintenance operation is at that community. And to Kara's point and to Jonathan's point, the reason a swimming pool stays, residents love it, it stays looking nice, is it receives attention daily. You measure it by playing chemist, taking water out, changing the colors, putting drops in, and reacting accordingly. In addition, you do preventive measures to where you backwash the sand filter and you make sure that you have the chemicals on hand before you need them. You have a plan for whatever happens and comes into play. And then your swimming pool will stay nice for your residents all year long with a small amount of care every single day. Now, you can maintain your pool reactively, meaning you don't attend to it every day, every second or third day when it starts to not look quite so blue. So you go dump a bunch of stuff in, it counteracts, it goes crazy. Yes, it's still safe. It still operates. But you know what? We don't really have the money this month to replace the skimmer baskets. And the ones that we have, well, they're there, but we can put a rock in it and it'll sink down to the bottom and it'll still work, right? And that's reactive maintenance. And then, oh no, we have an algae bloom that could have been prevented had we just done the little things. And now our leasing office, our property manager, who has to walk past that on a tour, sees the green pool and starts yelling at maintenance. And maintenance says, wait a second, if I would have spent a half hour every day for the past 3 weeks, we never would have had this happen. But you said we had this other thing that was a higher priority. So the swimming pool, because it's not getting yelled at, not yelling, we do it.
Mhm.
Every property that I've traveled to and visit with swimming pool problems or swimming pool issues, go find the maintenance technician, maintenance supervisor, and just have a little conversation. You find out really quick that it's not all wonderful in maintenance land.
That's a very, I toured a property in Seattle last week, and the pool was closed until further notice. Right.
Mhm.
And it had, by look at the pool, it had been closed for quite a while.
And by the way, it works in the winter too.
I believe it.
It just by how well the swimming pool area, if you're in a part of the country where it's drained,
Mhm.
how well do they take care of it? It is indicative of ongoing preventive initiative care. And I'll just leave it with my, I have a common saying that I use, which is entropy is job security. If you fix it, great. You still have a job tomorrow because it's going to fail. If you don't fix it, great. You'll still have a job tomorrow because the building will still be there and residents will still be putting in work orders and will react, and I'll get it. But if we don't fix it, we'll fix it eventually.
And that's part of the problem, right? So thank you, the three of you guys, for joining us today. Really appreciate all the conversations. I hope everyone appreciate all the comments. Thank you for everyone for jumping in. We have a gap, right? We have a gap, and it's something we can fix. So for all those that have their hands in their, hands in pockets staring at the ground, this sounds very fixable with some small changes that happen off-site. There's some off-site changes around elevating the profile. What's the business that we're in, and making peer-to-peer hierarchies around maintenance and asset management, or asset sustainability and their facility management, and making that the same level as the PM or the revenue side of things. Allowing for the maintenance teams to, I think, and the big thing that's kind of, I hope not lost in the conversation today, around the discipline of providing excellent maintenance and building that enablement, that career path, that training, and making it a priority such that they can go to that training. If they don't do that, negative consequences happen. And so somehow fixing that at the organizational level, where you have more regional maintenance leaders that have the same equitable power and relationship as those that are in their other part of the hierarchy of the organization. And if we don't do this from a proactive perspective, both in the maintenance programs, career paths, talent acquisition, retention, et cetera, we're going to have buildings that fall apart, that are open job positions, and that's going to crater your NOI. So it doesn't matter what your cap rate is. If your NOI is going this way and you can't fill it with people and the building is falling apart, that asset is going to be stuck. And you're going to have a zombie asset in your portfolio that you've got to go spend the money anyways. Oh, and by the way, we all know this: had you paid for HVAC HVAC reno in 2021 versus paying for 2025, that's like a 6x number versus what you paid for it then and what you paid for it now. So you're going to pay for it, and it's going to cost way more, even higher.
It's higher than 6x because it's not an apples to apples comparison.
It's not. So there you go. So thanks everyone for listening. The crisis is now, it's budget season. This is the opportunity to create those GL lines, to get those people in place. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments on the chat, tag the chat. We'll get notifications on it. And then you can also reach out to Kara, Paul, Jonathan, or even myself through LinkedIn, and happy to carry the conversation further. Thank you everyone for taking up the time today and listening. Thank you everyone for joining and providing all of your input. This has been very helpful and educational, everyone. Thank you, everyone. Have a great Friday, and hope this is food for thought for the weekend. You guys hang tight, and we'll close it off. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.